there's frameworks that we use at Mars that have been successful on validating the business model, building your team, and getting you through this chaos. Frameworks and methodologies that will help you. So this is where we're going to deep dive into some of the frameworks. So this is key. This slide is the second most important slide. So the Entrepreneurial API, what the heck does that mean? Well, instead of, and hopefully we have a sigh of relief, instead of building or writing, a 100-page business plan that usually starts with an executive summary, is filled with market analysis, and ends with financial statements. Anybody put one of those together in here? Yeah, a bunch of us, right? We've been through that, and how many of us still have it in our drawer? So I have about 300, by the way, if you want to see them. They're upstairs in a drawer. We no longer use, we're not saying you no longer have to write a business plan. The exercise of doing that is actually quite valuable. But what is helping startups succeed is this idea of the Entrepreneurial API, which is taking your business model, which is our best guess, assumptions on how we're going to make money, who our customer is, what channels we're going to reach them, and turn that into sustainable value-generating business. And it's easy to talk about up here, a heck of a lot harder in your shoes when you're out there talking to customers, partners, et cetera, trying to raise money, build a team to validate. So we need this process, part two, or this lean methodology of getting through that. And so there's frameworks that we use at Mars that have been successful on validating the business model, building your team, and getting you through this chaos. What's happening while you're doing this, regardless of the industry or the space you're in, is this idea of rapid iteration. So as you're getting insight from the customers on one side of the funnel, you're building and turning that into the next version of the product or service on the other side. In the healthcare space, it might be getting through regulatory, right? It just might be that is the key hurdle that you need to get over. In the tech world, you might be rapidly iterating from a SaaS-based business to an end-user-based business, or iterating on a double-sided business model like Amazon. You're not just selling books, you have web services, and you're delivering groceries. So that's what we're here to do, is trying to figure out how to validate your business model and help you do that through frameworks or this idea of the discipline of entrepreneurship. We follow a bunch of folks that are writing in all entrepreneurial in the lean world. So Steve Blank, Bill Ollett, Osterwalder, Wasserman, all of these folks will take you through some of their work. The first one that we follow is a gentleman by the name of Alexander Osterwalder, who wrote Business Model Generation. Has anybody read that book or done a Canvas, heard of the Canvas? Great, so a few folks. What his framework entail, or what he proposes, is this idea that a business model is all you need, is that one-page document that describes how your business will capture and deliver value at an early stage. Right, so this is pre-business plan. This is, you have an idea in the audience tonight, you want to turn that into a product. How do you do that? Well, there's a framework called the Business Model Canvas or Business Model Generation that helps you do that. And it starts with value prop. What are you delivering? What is the value? What is a product or service? What is a problem that you're solving? Then we move to the right side. If you look at everything at the value prop to the right, it's what we call the front side of the business model. This is everything the customer sees. This is everything you're testing at an early stage. So we look at value prop early on and customer. So if you were to put numbers on each of these boxes in terms of the order that you would look at it, if you need some structure, it would be value prop and customers. Does the customer resonate with the value prop? And what is it that we're testing to make it resonate? And how do we get from problem solution fit to product market fit? And so this really is a great tool to start testing hypotheses or assumptions you have on who your customers are, what the value is that you want to deliver to them, what relationships you want to form. So that could be get, keep, grow, right? So how am I going to get, keep, and grow this customer base? On both the B2B and B2B side, or B2C side, what channels are you going to reach them through? What is the cost of those channels? See how this can already get daunting and like scary if you look at it. And then what revenue is falling out of that side of the model? So how are we generating revenue? Is it an asset sale? Is it a licensing agreement? Is it monthly recurring revenue? Is it advertising? Is it, who knows? Is it through affiliate revenue? Then we have on the left side, all the stuff that you need to be doing and have on hand to make the front side of the model work. So there's a lot of discussion around the front side of the business model, so just getting you out of the building and testing with customers at a very early stage, your value prop with them, but the back side is what falls out of all of that testing. So key activities you need to do. Do I need to sell this product online or in person? Do I then need a sales team? Do I need to raise capital? Do I need to do discovery? What are the activities that are going to make my business model successful? What key resources do I need to have on hand? So investment, team, intellectual property, traction, if it's a tech startup, right? These sorts of things, these are the sort of things that you need to have on hand. And then what falls out of that is partnerships. So the next box we look at is your assumptions on who can help you fill the gaps in your business model and deliver value right away. Out of that falls costs. So what is the cost that it takes to sell, to close, so to get, keep, and grow those customers, build the company, et cetera, et cetera. So that's the business model. We know through research why they fail. Typically, they're starting out with irrelevant jobs. And this is okay. Failure, I like to use the term pivot over failure, but that's fine. You may, in the beginning, have customers that just simply not resonating with the value you're delivering. That's cool. What we do is we use the lean process, this idea of rapid iteration, testing again with other segments to figure out whether or not we do have a segment that's going to work. Poor execution of the business model, so just simply, maybe it's team issues, maybe it's scale issues, just cannot get this business model validated. The third one is external threats. I don't know. So Apple Watch comes along and wipes out all of our wearable watch devices as a wild example. Or the digital camera comes along and wipes out film. This is examples of threats that are in the industry or space. Kind of Porter 5 Force type stuff if you're from the business school background, and I will not bore you with that. So we no longer compete on just a really great technology or big idea. It's actually a differentiated, competitive business model that makes a lot of our startups successful. And that's what we're really focused on. And so for you in the audience, it's like, okay, great, you're telling me I don't need a business plan. Now I've got to go out and do this business model, test assumptions, talk to people, talk to customers, figure out whether or not the value of what I'm delivering actually resonates with them. Some of you may have already spent a lot of investment money in your product or your idea. So now it's like, what do I do? Like, how do I assess that that business model is actually something I want to continue to build? And so some of the questions you may want to ask yourself, there's 7 key ones that we look at, is how rapidly and easily can you grow your business without hitting any roadblocks, infrastructure, customer support, et cetera? How can you protect it from competition? What is the game-changing cost structure? So is your cost structure substantially different or better than other companies? A good example is Citizen Hotels in Europe. I don't know if anybody has stayed at Citizen, a couple. What they were able to do was assemble the rooms to their hotel targeted towards business travelers, off-site, assemble them on-site, eliminate the front desk, eliminate amenities, and were actually able to reduce their cost structure. It's an example Getting others to do the work for you. So how much does your business model rely on customers, partners, employees to generate value for you? Think of Southwest Airlines. Think of employees that are part of the operation of your business. Think of content marketing providers for a lot of online digital type businesses. These are hugely valuable. Think of mentors that are helping you at Mars and elsewhere that are driving value for your business model. How do you earn before you spend to get it? This is a big one. So this isn't just licensing type arrangements. It could be monthly recurring revenue. It could be partnerships, affiliate programs. A difficult question to answer, but how are we earning before we spend to get it? And reoccurring revenue is the one that I was talking about, but I had the wrong slide. So how is every sale effort turning into a follow-up revenue or purchase? This is a big problem, of course, with app downloads, right? That one-time charge, and my customers are there, but there's nothing reoccurring about that charge. Or the freemium model that ends after one subscription, one iteration, one purchase of the product. So how do I turn that into multiple reoccurring revenue? Reoccurring revenue is huge. You're going to hear the term MRR, monthly reoccurring revenue, a lot, especially if you are in the tech world. And all that means is you can predict expenses and revenue a lot easier. So it's a good one to follow. Switching costs, how difficult is it to get your customer, how difficult is it to keep, but also what's going to happen if they leave your company? What are you doing to keep them there? Does anybody have an espresso machine? A few folks? Great. So the Nespresso machine, for their patents right now, you could only get that silly little pod online or in the store. And that created a huge switching costs for Nestle, right? And that's a great way of keeping customers. If I think of LinkedIn or Facebook, if we lose those tomorrow, what do we lose? We probably lose a ton of connections, all of those photos, just as some examples of what you might lose. The next one is customer development. We follow Steve Blank a lot. He wrote the Startup Owner's Manual, serial entrepreneur, developed this whole idea of lean. It really came from him and his work at Stanford and in his own business. And he, again, is all about this idea of rapid iteration, this idea of going through discovery, turning those insights from the business model that we've just created into a minimum viable product that you test with customers, and then turn that into the next iteration of your product. And we're seeing this happen all over, not just in tech. GE, for instance, creates their MVP for fridges in a store in Soho, New York, and they invite customers in, get insights from them, test their marketing message, test the physical product, the engineering, the distribution channel, all from what they call a minimum viable product. Rather than, can you imagine, obtaining investment or building in a research pipeline to launch and then to find out the customer actually doesn't want your product. So the this idea of customer discovery, customer development, is reducing the risk of failure, but also helping you get to customer insight a lot quicker versus a waterfall type arrangement where you plan a launch date and you work back to that launch date with your team. So completely different, we're flipping everything that we've learned on our head and continuously learning from our customers to turn that into a product via customer development and a minimum viable product. So that's another big idea, is tonight, if you have an idea, one question you might ask yourself is, what is the minimum version of this idea that I can leave Mars tonight and test with customers or potential customer groups to figure out if this is really something I want to pursue? And there's a ton of resources here on what questions you ask and how you turn that into insight, and et cetera, et cetera. And you can definitely ask me after this session. I can give you a little bit of advice on how to do that. But it's this idea of continuously testing your hypothesis and turning it into a product, then turning that into actual customers that are generating revenue, helping you build the company. The next methodology framework we look at is lean. And it, again, favors experimentation over elaborate planning, customer feedback, iterative design. So tonight, when you're networking with your neighbors, you can be testing your idea, getting their feedback, and then taking that feedback and moving it into an MVP really, really quickly. It's a very high-level example. Of course, you want to be testing with as many of your target customer group as possible, but it's a great example of how you can start building something that people want. And this is at a very high level lean, right? It's this idea of building something, measuring it, and testing or learning from it. So it could be an idea that turns into an MVP, and then tech world turns into code. Then you're testing it, measuring it with data analytics, taking that data, learning from it, turning it into the next iteration. So it's this cycle. And in my experience, it's how quickly you can get through that cycle that makes founders really successful, how quickly they could learn and take insights, less about the amount of investment they have on hand, because we already know from research that can be prematurely deployed. It's about how quickly they can get through this build, test, measure cycle. So why is this all important? Well, let's look around, right? Kodak, Blockbuster, RIM, really great technologies, pioneers in their time, but were not able to keep up in terms of their business model. And that is a key lesson for us all to learn, I think, especially in the dot-com bust and what's been happening lately in a few different industries. So we take that learning and we turn it into insight. Another example, it doesn't happen just from companies that were started 100 years ago or 10 or 20. It's happening now. Like, some startups are getting a lot of capital. We call Color. Anybody remember Color, the app, similar to Instagram, without the social sharing stuff? Okay. So Color was an app, and the joke with them was that they threw basically a $41 million party that nobody came to. It's very true, right? They had the fancy office in San Francisco. Had raised a ton of capital through some very clever and successful, sophisticated pitching to investors in that community, and very quickly burned through all of it. So it's like, what do you do if you get your allowance? Do you plan it? Bad example, but that's Color, right? So we are adamant when we have a startup in our ecosystem here at Mars of helping them deploy capital at the right times based on customer insight. That's a key lesson that we've learned, and we continue to learn that lesson at Mars a lot. The next one is segmentation. So segmentation looks at, okay, how do I describe this? So let's say you have 6 to 12 segments in your mind right now for the product or service that you want to deliver. And we always recommend having in the beginning 6 to 12 to analyze. How do you then take that and turn that into a beachhead market, a market that's going to be sustainable for you? And so what you want to do is take that 6 to 12 and turn it into customers that are actually going to buy from you. We call it a beachhead market. And what's happening is they're actually hiring your product to do something for them, right? And so I want to give you this example, just quickly interjected, from Clayton Christensen. Has anybody seen the milkshake example on YouTube? By the way, it's pretty viral. Check it out on YouTube. So Clayton is also an entrepreneur, prof at Harvard, and went out and studied why folks were buying milkshakes at a certain time of day. And what was really interesting is able to take this insight and turn it into a multi-billion-dollar increase in milkshake sales for a large fast food conglomerate. But the idea is not that he was successful at it, but the idea of listening to customers and trying to figure out what jobs they're trying to get done for your product. It's a good question to ask. If a customer buys your product or service, what job are they trying to get done? What is the intrinsic value we're delivering? Is it just the tangible value? Is it an experience? Is there some sort of an emotional attachment to this thing? What are they doing? And so by establishing a single market out of all of that segmentation, you actually start creating like buying cycles. So you're looking for customers that have A really good like buying behavior, early sales cycles that help you, or quicker sales cycles that help you establish a market position before your resources run out. Sorry. The next one we look at is lean analytics. One, and there's many different theorists, I'm just throwing some ones that we follow up here. One, Canadian actually as well, Alistair Krall, developed this idea of innovation accounting or lean analytics. And he is all about helping startups, founders like yourselves, choose the metrics that matter for you and your startup, move it towards a business objective, hold your team accountable. This is a big one, right? It's those weekly, monthly team meetings with investors or with your existing team, poring over the data, the insights that you've learned from customer, and holding each other accountable to this idea of lean, build, test, measure. And this is happening weekly, and the successful teams that are doing it are the ones that are sitting down weekly and holding themselves accountable to the data. It could be anything from, okay, who did you talk to this week, to what did you spend in marketing and how did that move our business forward? Who have we pitched on the investment side and what is their response? And where's the product act, the product team? Or in the early stage, it might be one person is you're wearing multiple hats. It might be one person that is the product team, and you're holding yourselves accountable with metrics. This is just an example, not going to go through it, but in the startup world, we have what's called pirate metrics for startups, or a funnel called R, acquisition, activation, retention, and revenue. And an example of how your startup might look at your analytics is kind of like this. Okay, so how many folks did we acquire? And how did we activate them? What was the assigned cost to activate them? And how do we keep and grow them? So what is the revenue? This is really critical no matter what sector you're in. If you come from the corporate world, you know how important metrics are and how important this is to building your business. And in a startup, it's even more critical because you have so little time and patience to get through this chaos. Team. So if you haven't followed him, follow him. Noah Wasserman wrote an amazing book based on 12 years of research called The Founder's Dilemmas. So what he's known for is the ability of taking your founding team and holding them accountable, but also looking at roles, relationships, rewards. In this case, he has this idea of the company rule that you hold your team accountable, you take responsibility, you have an open mind, you embrace change. So this is really, really critical. As I was mentioning, he is famous for creating this framework called roles, relationships, rewards. But if you get his material and you start using it, he also has some amazing, amazing content on how you create founders agreements. How do you do equity splits with your founders? How do you test their intentions? So do they want to control the startup, or do they want to disperse equity amongst a bunch of other founders that can help scale the startup? And he has done a lot of great research on how successful those startups are based on equity split, based on roles, relationships, and rewards. Phenomenal stuff that's helped us a lot. I won't go through all 13 of these questions, but in the early stage, I wanted to give you just some questions that you can be asking yourselves and to form your founding teams. This is a big one we find at Mars is, okay, Mars, how can you connect me with my co-founder? Where are they? This is what I need from a skills and capabilities standpoint. But before we can do that, we need the founding team to really, really look at how well, if you have an existing team, how well you know each other, or where can you find those folks with domain expertise? And once you have them, how open are you with communication? Can you have those open conversations on a weekly basis, talk about the elephants in the room? So I'm not talking about being on WhatsApp or Slack or Trello or on the phone. It's usually an in-person meeting where you're talking about some pretty critical, highly charged type topics. I have a meeting tomorrow at 10 that I'm dreading. That's all about this, actually. So you really have to have the ability as founders to do that. It's draining but you have to clear the air. You have to talk about where the business is going on a weekly basis in a constructive way that drives the startup forward. Preventing friction, this is all stuff that we deal with, I think, in our daily lives. Can you have frank conversations? Yeah, it's covered most of that. It leaves this here. If you're digging for an idea, be ready to climb Everest. You've seen the stats, you've seen the failure rate, you know what's ahead of you. Rely on us, put us to work at Mars, not just Mars, but other incubation centers, your local investors, put them to work, actually get them to help you build your company, connect you with customers. Understand why we're failing. So this is a big key point of what I talked about tonight. What is it we're learning from customers? Don't be afraid of failure. You have to, in some cases, take a risk. And it's what we learn from that. And you have to get super psyched about it. That will move you forward quickly. This idea of hypothesizing, testing, assumptions. I'm constantly in meetings with founders where I'm saying, I think that's an assumption. Let's test it. It drives them crazy because they think they have the answer until they get out in front of a customer and they say, actually, no, it's this that I want, and et cetera, et cetera. So this idea of hypothesizing, testing is really important. The idea of what we're searching for a business model, we don't have one validated at this point. If you're in early stage in discovery or validation, we're searching for that business model. So it should be fun. It should be something that you're really excited about. Get out of bed and you're like, I want to learn more about how I can build this thing that and leave my day job or whatever it is that I'm doing and actually make an impact in the world. This is really, really critical. Talking to customers, right? Surprise, surprise. So the stuff that Steve Blank says and states in his hypothesis and frameworks works. Getting into the building, talking to customers. We always say the answers are not in Mars, they're actually out on the street. And that's where I spend a lot of my time, is actually not in here, outside, talking to customers, figuring out what's working, what's not working, and then building businesses based on that. The idea of minimizing waste, deploying resources at the right time. It is so difficult when you have your first round of investment not to throw the pedal to the metal and market the heck out of it or sell the heck out of it or build the next iteration or the next feature set or whatever it is. It's incredibly difficult, and that's why I call it the discipline of entrepreneurship. You really have to restrain yourself and make sure that you're deploying capital and resources based on customer insight. It's easy for me to say up here, but it's a heck of a lot harder in your shoes when you're out there with your teams building your companies. So building a diversified team is another big one. I can't tell you how many times founding teams will come in and I'm like, it's like looking at you remember the Wrigley or the Spearmint commercial, twins? They've all hired the same person. It's like, okay, well, where's the diversity here, and what skill sets that you have that your other founders don't have that are going to help you scale the business quickly? It's again easy for me to say, but you can see it. So always rely on your mentors and advisory teams and friends, even in some cases, to figure out if you've really got a diversified team to help you build the company. I can't believe I don't know why it's on here. I shouldn't be on here, but it is something that a lot of us are guilty of. Using lean analytics to build your funnel, meaning that whole pirate metrics for startups, acquisition, retention, growth. That's key. So not just following vanity metrics. So in the tech world, page views, downloads, hits, those are all metrics that don't matter. It's metrics that you've decided as a founding team that are really important in moving your startup forward. The last point is just have fun, enjoy the journey. You're going to learn a ton. It's a real world MBA in 2 years. That's what I've learned. But we're here to support you, right? We're here. We've got a ton of great advisors that are entrepreneurs like myself that are passionate about helping you succeed because we want to see Toronto become a lot more successful in the world stage. I think you don't have to move to the Valley to be successful. You can be right here in the seat that you're in. watching the games after the Jays game after this, of course. But yeah, we're here to help. So thanks a lot for taking your time, not watching the game, but watching me for some reason. Follow me at Cowboy Tweets. Tweet out anything that you found interesting. I will follow you back. I will talk to you directly through Twitter as well. But more importantly, email me. Let's have coffee. Let's talk about your idea. Let's talk about how you can take some of what I was talking about tonight and turn that into something that's going to be amazing for people to use and create impact for you and a better life for you, I guess. That's why I'm here. So thanks again. Put me to work.